Time now for business. Let's say hello to Kate Moody.
Hi, Francois.
And we feel like we're perhaps getting close to changing the global rules on taxation, and therefore the bargaining seems to be getting harder.
Yeah, absolutely. We're hearing all this momentum towards some sort of a deal, possibly within weeks. But of course, not all countries are going to be on board with this. Ireland's finance minister has been telling France 24 that he believes agreement will be found at an international level on how to tax multinational companies, but that small countries must be allowed to compete on the rate of that tax. This after France and Germany's finance ministers said they would be pushing for an agreement on a global minimum tax for companies at a G7 meeting next week. Bruno Le Maire, who you can see there, was speaking to French radio earlier today, saying that other countries like Ireland would find it hard to resist any deal reached at a G7 and G20 level. Ireland's Pascal Donohoe says proposed minimum tax rate of 15% would hit a fifth of the country's corporate tax revenue, but that the country is ready for change. He's been speaking to France 24's Catherine Nicholson.
Over the last number of years, many things that had been a part of our tax policy and corporate tax policy for previous decades, we have removed that and we've changed it. And change is coming, and when that change comes, it will affect our corporate tax revenue. But on the other hand, we're no longer a country in which tax policy equals our entire economic model. We're well on that point. Other things about our base within the European Union, our education system, our labour market, our investment in infrastructure, those things play a huge part in our competitiveness too, and will continue to matter in the future.
And you can watch that full interview in this week's Talking Europe. That'll be on air Saturday at 1:15 Paris time and on our website, france24.com, of course. Next, the French government has announced more help for businesses due to COVID-19. 15 billion euros will go to shore up the existing government schemes, which have been supporting companies and workers over the past year. Shirley Sitbon reports.
When COVID-19 first hit France and the first lockdown was imposed, the government took a series of measures to support businesses and avert job cuts. Despite the massive bill, the president promised to continue the policy no matter the cost. Now the French government is extending its aid package again as the economy reopens after a third lockdown and the support is being scaled back.
Nous sommes arrivés à ce moment de la sortie du quoi qu'il en coûte, mais nous le faisons progressivement. Un restaurant qui rouvre, il faut qu'il puisse embaucher, donc on maintient le paiement d'une partie des charges pour l'État. Il faut qu'il fasse des achats de fournitures, donc on maintient le fonds de solidarité. On sait qu'il va ouvrir avec des jauges qui vont être plus réduites, il va ouvrir d'abord qu'en terrasse, donc on prend en compte cette perte de chiffre d'affaires.
In the revised budget plan, the state will inject another 15 billion euros in financial support, including tax breaks for businesses, grants from the Solidarity Fund for companies forced to close, and a top-up for the furlough scheme, which has paid workers' salaries. The finance minister says the government will decide at the end of August whether some of those measures should be maintained. Bruno Le Maire says almost 100 billion euros spent so far have allowed France's economy to restart quickly, and economic growth is expected to exceed 5% this year.
Let's check in on the day's trading action now. Another mixed close for the major European indices saw the CAC 40 boosted by Airbus. Shares of the aerospace giant jumping about 9% as it said that it would be ramping up production, trying to turn the page on the coronavirus pandemic. The FTSE 100 and Frankfurt DAX both closing slightly below the flat line. That optimism did help boost Boeing a little bit as well. Airbus's U.S. rival advancing around 4% as it hopes for a strong economic recovery. That's boosting the Dow Jones, and Wall Street is trending higher this hour, up between about 0.2 and 0.4%. Well, the U.S. economy and labor market continue to recover from the worst of the pandemic. The Commerce Department has confirmed its initial estimate that GDP expanded 6.4% in the first 3 months of this year compared to the same period a year earlier. Most forecasts suggest it will pick up steam even more in the second quarter. Around 8% growth is predicted. The number of new unemployment claims, meanwhile, has continued to drop. Just over 400,000 new applications for jobless benefits were filed across the U.S. last week. That is the lowest level since before the pandemic hit, although it's still nearly double the pre-pandemic average. A number of states now are set to phase out the more generous unemployment benefits that the stimulus bill extended through September. At least 23 states have announced that they'll be ending those more generous federal benefits early, some of them in the coming weeks. Trade representatives from the US and China have held talks described by Beijing as the first candid exchange on the subject since Joe Biden took office in January. The U.S. trade negotiator Catherine Tai spoke to her counterpart Liu He via video link on Thursday. She says she's analyzing whether China is respecting the terms of a Phase 1 deal that was signed at the beginning of 2020 under Donald Trump. Earlier in his administration, the world's two largest economies imposed tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of each other's goods. Many of those tariffs do remain in place. An initial face-to-face meeting between the Biden administration and Chinese officials in Alaska broke down back in March. We know, of course, that the Biden administration trying to make overtures towards Beijing, but certainly keeping a firm line on all things trade, at least.
Interesting, yeah. There's continuity, it seems, between the Trump and Biden administrations on that score.
Certainly in this area, yes.
Many thanks, Kate Moody. We'll have more business news for you later.